The sheep. It is one of the more beloved mobs within the Minecraft community. Many players seek them out in their survival playthroughs to gain access to their wool, or to perfect a pastoral aesthetic. But despite their huggable appearance and oh-so-innocent eyes, seriously, there's nothing in there. The sheep holds a secret that could overturn our understanding of the mob. A secret that lies right before our very eyes. The true nature of the sheep is not what you thought it was. Minecraft is a game filled with secrets. Some are obvious, some are not. Some are hidden in plain sight. In this series, we address just a few of these secrets, and discuss the implications of some of Minecraft's most hidden conspiracies. Do you know Minecraft as well as you thought you did? Or have these little details gone unnoticed right under your nose? Like most animal-based mobs, the sheep is passive to players. It is often used as livestock and can be slaughtered for mutton. However, there is one aspect to the sheep that makes it special. Its wool. As a multi-purpose block, wool is sought after by players wanting to make beds, banners, or highly flammable yet colorful structures. Wool itself can be transformed into a variety of colors using dyes. However, for thrifty or aesthetic-conscious players, wool can also be dyed while it is still on the sheep. Any sheep dyed in this way will remain the color it was dyed, even when shorn. The wool grows back in that same dyed color. But wait a minute, that should be impossible. Dyes aren't permanent, not when it comes to hair or wool. The color remains on the strands that were dyed, yes, but once the wool grows back again, it should return to the color it was before it was dyed. Unless there's something more going on here. It is possible that the chemicals in the dye are physically altering the sheep's hair follicles in order to make the sheep naturally grow wool in artificial colors. But I don't think that's the full story. You see, there's another mechanic that we haven't taken into account yet. Breeding. When sheep breed, their offspring has a random chance of inheriting the colors of either of its parents. However, something different happens when the parents are of colors that can be mixed. You see, sheep follow the same color combination rules that dyes do. Just as white and black dye can be mixed to form gray dye, a black and white sheep will produce gray offspring, and only gray offspring. But the same is true of dyed sheep. If a white sheep and a red dyed sheep breed, the offspring will be pink, and only pink. The implications of this are enormous. It means that not only are you changing the nature of the sheep's wool or its hair follicles, you're changing the genetic structure of the sheep itself when you dye it. That's some pretty powerful dye, especially when you take into account all it is crushed up plant matter or squid ink. But what if there was another explanation? What if we've got everything wrong? What if all of our assumptions have been leading us down the wrong path this whole time? You see, there is another explanation. There is another process that these color-changing behaviors could be stemming from. Nature is filled with life that can change color. There are animals that change color to blend in or with the seasons or environment. But there are other processes as well, one of which you may have seen in action before. Take, for example, a white flower. When water moves up the stem of the plant, it ends up in the petals and the leaves. This process is normally invisible, but if you dye the water the flower draws from, a magical thing happens. The flower petals transform into the color of the dye. The flower itself changes color from the inside. This happens because the water carries the dye along with it in its journey through the plant. If you see a brightly colored fresh flower in a florist shop, like rainbow tie-dyed colored roses, odds are the florists have used this absorption dye method to create these colors. If we apply this same process to the sheep, it means that the dye is not placed onto the wool like hair dye, but is rather eaten by the sheep, where it then travels through the sheep's body and out into the wool. It makes sense, and it explains the behavior we see in the color mixing during sheep breeding. The sheep colors change in the same way as the dyes do because it is the dyes themselves interacting. It has nothing to do with the genetic structure of the sheep. If it were the genetic structure, then sheep would always have the chance of coming out the same colors of one of its parents, as well as having the chance of being the mixed variant, not taking into account things like which colors are dominant and recessive. There will be no sheep Punnett squares discussed here today. Of course, this also leads us to another conclusion. Mammals don't have blood vessels, or any vessels, in their hair, so the dye wouldn't be able to fill the wool in the way we've described. Which means that in Minecraft, sheep are not mammals. Sheep are plants. That's right, sheep are plants. And that means that their wool is not hair, but rather tiny petals of curly flowers. But MT, you ask, how could this be possible? Sheep walk and eat and drop meat when they die. They certainly don't act like plants. And that is true. But keep in mind that Minecraft is a game of almost infinite possibilities. There are plants that exist in the real world that eat animals. Venus flytraps and pitcher plants, for example. And there are vines like the love vine that are parasitic, which means that they grow on other plants and steal the water and nutrients from their hosts. When sheep eat grass, this could simply be another example of parasitic relationship. Why else would the grass completely vanish from the spot the sheep eats from? Normal sheep don't just drag up grass by the roots and consume the entire plant. And there are also plants in the real world that exist that, in a sense, walk. Walking palm trees can actually move to places with better sunlight and solid ground. It takes them a few years, but they manage it. If it is possible on this small scale in the real world, it's entirely possible to have walking plants in a game like Minecraft. As for the meat, what proof do we have that raw mutton in Minecraft is actually meat and not, say, a form of fleshy fruit? One best eaten after cooked into a sweet, juicy steak. After all, a whole roasted cauliflower behaves very much like a roast of meat in the oven and on the table. So what does this mean for the sheep? What does this mean for the way we interact with our beloved fluffy friends? Well, not much. After all, sheep are sheep. The fact that they are plants doesn't change the way they work, or the way in which we use them. But perhaps this knowledge will make you think the next time you stare into the eyes of a sheep. Maybe it'll help you realize just how much you don't know, just how much you take for granted. After all, who knows what other Minecraft conspiracies are lurking right under your nose?